Welcome in. I'm your host, Theo Lennox, and I hereby call this meeting of the Piece of Shit Book Club to order. I'm joined by my literary luminaries today. We've got Chip Wilson. How's everything, Chip?
I'm doing good, Theo. Thanks.
And Dr. Bo Dashington. Always a pleasure, Doctor. How's everything on your end?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, this is the first episode of Piece of Shit Book Club, the podcast. It's our first show. It's probably going to be a bit of a shit show. I'm not going to say, you ever watch a talk show and they're like, yeah, we got a great show for you tonight. I guarantee you this is not going to be a good show. But we're doing our best here. In our feature segment, we'll be diving into Malcolm J. Brenner's Wet Goddess. But I thought before we jump into that, because it's our first show, because we're really excited to be hosting this, we want to discuss what the show's about and maybe what the show's not about. And so don't consider this the final word, but a few things that come to mind when I think of Piece of Shit Book Club. It's in service of our love of lowbrow culture. We're taking a shit on lousy fiction and nonfiction. It's about shallow pettiness. It's about middle-aged white guy takes. It's about fun and frivolity. And it's about being corruptible and monetizing any eventual listeners.
It's about middle-aged white guys, but they don't read books.
Dr. Dashington, when you think of what the show's about, what does it mean to you?
No, I think you said it best. It's about taking a nice big dump on a book that deserves it as we go on. I'm pretty sure we're always going to be talking about people who are grifters or people who are doing something really wrong. We're not just picking on people who are trying to perform their art. We're targeting people who are doing something that's generally a little bit sus, as will be the case this week.
And I think that's a great lead into what the show's not about. And what the show's not about, we'll take on grifters. We'll take on shitty authors. We're not going to be taking on Chuck Tingle. I know a lot of people in the Piece of Shit Book Club, Reddit, love this guy. We're not Chuck Tingle fans over here. It's too on the nose, it's too self-aware, and it's not what the Piece of Shit Book Club is about. We're also not about bigotry.
I mean, sometimes It'll be about bigotry, but we're against it. We're not for it, even though we're a group of middle-aged white guys commenting on it.
Yeah, we're again it, not for it.
We have a long history with Chuck Tingle. Maybe we can cover on a different episode because we interacted with him, and he even hosted like a guest review on the blog, like early in his storied career.
Mm-hmm.
The man himself.
We don't do that because he's doing a bit. He's a bit. It's a very, very repetitive bit of just like funny, shocking title to get attention. And there's only, I think one of the reasons we dislike it is because there's very little to analyze or pick apart about that. It's like, he's like, I fucked my typewriter. Okay, great. There's not really much to say about that. My dinosaur lawyer boned my grandma.
Yeah.
But when you've got a guy banging a dolphin, I mean...
No, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's if the author is the funniest guy in the room, then it's kind of hard to work with the material.
It's like Sharknado. It's like when it comes to bad movies.
Yeah.
Like if there's someone's deliberately trying to do the bad movie genre, it's like it doesn't really work for sitting around having a laugh.
So I think that gives us a great idea of what the show's about, what the show's not about. What are you guys reading? What are you hearing? What's on your radars?
I've got a child on the way. And then my wife's Chinese background. So I've been reading a bunch of books about growing up Chinese or Asian or half Asian in North American society. And that's been pretty good. There's a few good books. One is called Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong, which is pretty good. And then I was reading some more historical ones, Come From Nowhere by Bian An.
You might enjoy, Dr. Dashington had recommended Rachel Dolezal's memoir to me, and I started reading it. I'm only about a quarter or a third of the way through, and it seems to touch on similar themes. She's not a minority strictly in the eyes of society, but in her own mind,
in the eyes of anyone. Yeah, maybe we need to remind people who Rachel Dolezal is.
So for many of you,
everyone is completely up to date.
From a 2017 viral video. She was a president of a local NAACP chapter. And she was doing an interview on a local news station, and they asked her, "Are you African American?" And she kind of equivocates and bullshits and then runs away. And it turned into this huge scandal where it turns out both of her parents are white, but she identifies as black. And interestingly, since the book was published, or since all of this happened, it hasn't triggered any reflection in her because she still identifies as black. It's not like she used to be black and now she's realized the error of her ways. But all I can say is actually it's surprisingly well written considering the source, and her upbringing is quite interesting. So I'm not ready to label it a piece of shit book yet, but it might be something that would interest you, Chip, given your focus on these themes.
Yeah, and that's a grift I've been considering getting in on too. Because like if I have a Chinese kid, I mean, I can kind of claim it a little bit, right?
And you could and I think part of the grift that was like you have to pass for that ethnicity, and you could maybe pass for like half Asian.
Yeah.
Where?
Southwestern Asia, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, the last few times I've been there, like in China, people are always like, "Oh, are you Hu or are you from Xinjiang?" Like when you're on the East Coast. I don't know if you get that, but people are like, "Oh, are you?"
Yeah, people asking me if I'm weird.
Yeah. I'm trying to order something, and they're like, "You can't eat that. It has pork in it."
I thought you were just setting up a bit. Are you who's on first? That kind of thing.
Bo, what are you reading these days? What's on your radar?
Yeah, I've been. I'm actually the book I have right in front of me on my desk. Poetry of the Taliban is a surprisingly interesting book. Their poetry is a little dense. It's a little religious, as might not surprise you. But I've also been trying to dig around to find more material for maybe future episodes of the PSBC. I don't know how I went into this kind of weird rabbit hole, but into like weird self-help and religious books about like trying to help you stop jerking off all the time. So there's a great one. I mean,
Classics.
It's very, very simple title. David Baldwin's Why You Should Never Masturbate. But I'm also excited for. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Kenneth Copeland. He's one of those really awful American televangelists who's got he's the one who claimed he could blow away COVID through the TV screen. But he wrote a book called How to Discipline Your Flesh, which I'm sure he's got some tips.
You might want to check out our Christian NoFap. It sounds like it might be up your alley.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm less interested in actually following their advice as I am analyzing their piece of shit books. These ones, I mean, you were being generous to Rachel Dolezal and saying you're not sure if her book's a piece of shit. I think I could say pretty confidently that Kenneth Copeland's How to Discipline Your Flesh is a piece of shit.
Didn't we do one in the blog way back? There was like an anti-jerk-off book.
Yeah. There was one. I think that I reviewed it. I can't remember the name or who it was by, but what I remember specifically from it, the main thing was that he used Forrest Gump as his like example of, bad influence media, which was so funny because it's like Forrest Gump is I mean, such a tame, sentimental film, but also one that like pushes, well, didn't push, but it basically tells a conservative story where like Gump as like the simple guy who never gets in trouble is the one who succeeds. And then his girlfriend who runs around ends up dying of AIDS.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've been reading Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York by some chap named Andrew Loney. Dr. Dashington might be aware of this one because it seems to be tearing up the tabloids in the UK. So I fell in love with Prince Andrew after that famous
Okay.
I was trying to make the connection. Why on earth is Theo reading a book about British royalty? It's like, oh yeah, because of Prince Andrew. I know you're a big fan.
I had no idea who that guy was until I saw that interview. And after I saw it, I was like, I want to learn everything about this man. And that's, listeners probably will remember that interview was the one where he famously said he couldn't be a molester because he can't sweat. He was drawing these like wild tangential excuses as to why he couldn't be like, Epstein's buddy. And the book looked exciting. So if you look at the some of the headlines, the Telegraph had Prince Andrew, a tale of lust, avarice, and poo cushions. The Daily Mail said the truth about Andrew would bury the royal family for good. Warnings Epstein may have sold Prince's most intimate secrets to Putin, including videos. The Daily Beast, right to the point, Epstein's astonishing verdict on, quote, pussy-obsessed Prince Andrew. So you read those kind of, It's disgusting, but that's what passes for journalism these days.
This is the guy you fell in love with.
Well, these are the descriptions of the book of the guy that I fell in love with. It's poorly written. It's really just all exposition. There's no analysis, and it's like, as much as you hate this guy because he is an elitist, entitled child molester, the book's unfair to him because it's just like a running tally of every time the guy farted in a crowded elevator. Like it's just too petty. Half of it's about Fergie, which nobody cares about. Like, it's a real like bait and switch to say this is going to be like an Epstein book, and then it's just hundreds of pages about Fergie. But then I've got just like a short snippet of a review from Amazon here. Quote, "The formatting is shockingly unprofessional in the print edition. As others have pointed out, there'll be an asterisk by a word for a footnote. The footnote doesn't appear at the bottom of the page, but randomly in the middle of a page, sometimes in the middle of another sentence. The photo pages are extremely low quality as they're scanned from newsprint and poorly edited. Some photo pages have a description, but the photo is missing, or a photo, but the description is missing. What's going on at HarperCollins?" So truly a piece of shit book in every regard. I give it 3 poops and a bag of piss.
The funniest thing about him saying that he doesn't sweat is that like that's the clearest any elite has ever come to saying they're a lizard person.
Yeah.
No.
Just saying it outright. It's like, well, actually, I can't sweat like a human does.
Well, actually, I have to sit in the sun to warm my blood.
Yeah,
the days,
yeah, that's his alibi. He's like, I was resting on my rock.
I also just wrapped up reading 107 Days by Kamala Harris. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I think I'm hesitant to say that it's a proper piece of shit. It's really just a dull book, and any complaints I make about it are going to sound petty and political. So I listened to the audiobook. I'll say this, the audiobook's 9 hours. I listened to it and I thought, because I love to read books in sequence, with sort of thematic areas. So I thought, okay, I made it through this one. I'm going to listen now to the Hillary book. The Hillary book, after she lost the election, it's 18 hours long. And I got about a half an hour in. I thought, I can't do it. There's no way this is going to happen. So, 107 Days by Kamala Harris, not great. Some other books that are on our radar. These are upcoming or recently released. Poems and Prayers by Matthew McConaughey. That was released a couple weeks ago. It's, quote, "inspiring, faith-filled, and often hilarious collection of personal poetry and prayers about navigating the rodeo of life."
Oof.
That should be an official review. That's going to be an absolute piece of shit.
Yeah, cash grabs by celebrities. Yeah, awful. That sounds.
The way McConaughey writes, like his autobiography he put out a few years ago or whatever, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. He loves himself.
I think I'm having a flashback. We've done some books like that before. I think like cash grabs by celebrities. We did one. Remember, we did James Franco's book. I think I read that one. Palo Alto, I think it was called.
Yeah,
which is a collection of short stories. One of which is about a teacher trying to bang his students, and the teacher is like, it's not told as like a cautionary tale or some story of lust and avarice gone wrong. It's literally just like this story about this cool guy who used to bang his high school students. That book was a piece of shit, and I think the verdict on James Franco is pretty bad too nowadays.
Also, just recently released Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising by Lucas Miller. This is the author of Woke Jesus. The description reads, "The connection between woke ideology and paganism is not merely a coincidence, but a natural progression. Behind the emphasis on identity politics, intersectionality, and radical inclusivity, within wokeism lies century-old ancient pagan ideologies." So those were recently released. Coming up, undoubtedly a real piece of shit book, Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation by Eric Trump. That'll come out weeks, October 14th. In this eye-opening memoir, Eric Trump relays surprising and gripping moments throughout his career as part of America's most powerful family. And then finally, for all the Kirk heads in the house, thank God he had a unreleased book in the chamber ready to fire. Stop in the Name of God, Why Honoring the Sabbath Will Transform Your Life. Charlie Kirk due out December 9th.
You know, when you said Under Siege, I thought it was going to be a Steven Seagal book. Actually, I was kind of hoping it was going to be a Steven Seagal book.
Seagal has to have a few books out. Like, I mean, that guy's an all-time grifter, right?
Yeah.
He's also the master of every medium. Like, he's a singer.
The master of every medium. Yeah, okay, we got a book 2017, The Way of the Shadow Wolves.
The Deep State and the Hijacking of America. I mean, that's by Steven Seagal and Tom Morrissey. That has got to be on our list.
That's a good one.
Theo, you'll love this. The book was self-published, and the foreword is written by America's Sheriff, Joe Arpaio.
Oh, man. I think I die of COVID or something.
And he's in the Native American garb on the cover, I think. Am I wrong? I'm not sure what you call that jacket.
Oh, yeah, he kind of is. He's got a bolo tie and those leather tassel tassely-jackets.
Yeah, like we were talking about with Dolazal. Like, he's kind of a man of every race, though, Seagal.
He doesn't discriminate. Like, in Out for Justice, he's a Jamaican guy, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like in some movies, he just has like a full-out, very, very black accent, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was one with DMX.
Yeah.
He was definitely black in that one.
There was a clip of him at the military parade in Moscow last year or whenever it was, and he is definitely not looking fighting fit these days. And the toner that he's putting in his hair or whatever it is blacker than black.
Well, still, thank you for the service, Mr. Seagal. We salute you. If we go back to what this podcast is about and what it's not about, it's definitely a pro Seagal podcast. And that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
You got to just separate the art from the artist sometimes, Go back to his early works.
Because I think he got Me Too'd as well. So I think there's some...
Did he?
I'm sure
he did. Is that why
he
he defected to Russia?
Yeah, I think it had something to do with it. Anyhow, that's the book reports. We now move to our feature presentation. I'll hand it over to my associate, Chip Wilson, and Chip will lead us through a tale as old as time.
Yeah, so we're going to cover Wet Goddess today by Malcolm Brenner. I feel like I got to put some kind of disclaimer that this is the autobiography of a man who had sex with a dolphin that was in captivity. And so when we're discussing it, maybe it's upsetting for some people, the fact that he raped a dolphin. So unless you're like one of the... I looked on Amazon, there's like 5 people who gave it a 5-star review. So unless you're one of them, some aspects of this might be, I don't know, a little bit upsetting. But I think we've already covered some upsetting things. So feel free to jump in anytime, guys. But first I'm going to go through the book. And then he's later done some interviews and things where he kind of retells the story in like a slightly different way. But in the book, it's semi-autobiographical. And the way he presents things is through this character. I forget, to be honest, I can't remember the name of the main character. I think it's Bruce or something. But he's writing it as a piece of fiction while also going out and saying, yeah, this is a true story, actually also about me banging this dolphin. Thankfully, in the book, he doesn't go into super graphic detail about the acts. He does a little bit more in the interviews. I think we can play some clips from that, but probably avoid that specifically because, like, from my perspective, he's a rapist, like an animal rapist. And so I think I read somewhere that when people do commit like sexual assault, they like get off from like hearing it again or retelling it or whatever. So as much as I think this guy's a piece of shit when we're covering him, I don't want to necessarily give this guy any sort of like pleasure. But Wet Goddess, from the description, set at the height of the Vietnam protests, Jimi Hendrix and LSD, Wet Goddess is a story of strange encounters, awkward misadventures, and ultimately love. So he leans really
awkward misadventures.
Yeah. So the thing is, he leans really, really heavily into this backdrop to like set the tone for it, where it's like, yeah, everybody was doing LSD. There was the freak movements going on. There's all these experiments going on. And I think there's like a very famous set of experiments by a guy named John Lilly for communicating with dolphins that were kind of sensational, I think, in the 60s. And then they had there's like a resurgence in coverage of them, like in the early 2000s in like kind of clickbait articles and stuff like that. because he had like a female researcher live in a flooded house with one of the dolphins.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, they did stuff like give the dolphins LSD. The lady lived with the dolphin, and the whole purpose of those studies was to try and get humans to communicate with them. And on the side, like dolphins are very sexually aggressive animals. So I think the male dolphin this woman lived with was always coming on to her, and she basically jerked it off once in a while.
The dolphin's name was Peter.
Yeah, Peter the dolphin, yeah. Not to say any of that's ethical per se, but I think it was kind of like jerking them off so they could get back to the lessons to study English.
So this is from this woman who lived in the Dolphin area. Her name was Margaret Howe Levat, and she says about jerking off Peter, quote, "It wasn't sexual on my part, sensuous perhaps. It seemed to me that it made the bond closer. Not because of the sexual activity, but because of the lack of having to keep breaking. And that's really all it was. I was there to get to know Peter. That was part of Peter. It just became part of what was going on, like an itch. Just get rid of that scratch and we'd be done and move on." End quote.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just to be clear, we're not talking about the author of Wet Goddess here. This is a separate, separate situation.
Very famous situation, a very famous story that was like popular at the time. And then I think there was a documentary made about her at some point.
Absolutely.
And something that like if you're on the internet at any point, you probably saw it somewhere, some discussion of it. And then part of this whole, I think, broader fascination with like 60s experiments using LSD, MK Ultra, all this different kind of stuff that people are still fascinated by, right? I bring that up because Brenner with Wet Goddess, he really tries to position himself within that. But in his actual story, he's not doing any LSD. First off, he smokes weed. All he does is walk around and smoke weed. And he writes extensively about how it's like basically as if he's on LSD, like his fingers stretching out into the horizon and things like that. Well, he like smoked half a joint. So that I think that really kills his credibility. In one way. And he also wasn't part of studies that were related to communication or interaction with dolphins, right?
It was some like low-rent SeaWorld.
Yeah. So he was at Florida Land, and he was hired as a photographer at Florida Land to photograph the dolphins as part of like some reporting. And so like when he had access over the course of his short stay there, he was allowed to go in and visit the dolphins sometimes. A lot of the photos, I should say, of it are quite nice. So the dolphins are trained to, like, people would take these boat rides around the Florida Land, and the dolphins would, like, jump alongside them and stuff. He has some really nice photos, actually, that he took. But, he met the one female dolphin that was trained and, working in captivity as, like, a show dolphin, and, gradually had sex with it. He really tries to, like, lean in or kind of connect himself to this broader like 60s freak movement, weird experiments, that kind of thing. Like, but really it's just a story about a guy that snuck into a pen and banged a dolphin in captivity, right?
Do you think that like had he been using LSD, would that legitimize his actions in any way?
I don't think it would have legitimized it, but it would probably make a more interesting story. And I think that he wrote this because Wet Goddess came out, I think 2009 or so. And there were all these other stories about human dolphin relationships for a long time. And it was almost like a little bit of a cultural meme. And then he comes out of nowhere telling his story. So I think he was actually just jealous of the attention that this other lady got. And he appears in around 2009, 2010, telling this story about, hey, by the way, actually, I was the first one that banged a dolphin.
Yeah, I'm something of a scientist myself. Yeah, I also bang dolphins. But he also, to try to give himself credibility. I remember seeing in an interview that he did, and I'm sure you fellas probably saw the same interview. It gets quite shocking and quite offensive because he starts making the point that, back in the day, white people weren't allowed to sleep with African Americans. That was against the law. And then we have civil rights. We've changed that. And I think in the future, people are going to look back at me and say it's the same thing. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he basically draws that comparison between him having sex with animals and African Americans being treated equally to everyone else, which is obviously a profoundly shocking and I'm sure for many people very upsetting thing to say amongst the many other things. He's he, like as you said, he's trying to connect himself to science, but he's also acting as if he's like at the forefront of some like civil rights activism, and he's banging dolphins as like an act of kindness towards society, which is just obviously bananas.
When he first came out with the book, I think I had read it shortly after it was released, and my reaction was like, there's no way this can be true. This guy is, as you say, he's just tapping into this cultural milieu of having sex with dolphins, that existed around that time. But if you watch the interviews with this guy, I have no doubt that this guy's 100% legit.
Yeah.
He exudes sort of a creepiness that can't be feigned. He is a profoundly creepy dude.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny that the justification he makes with regards to, like interracial marriage or whatever, like he's making the slippery slope argument, the fear mongering, but it's like in a positive sense, that it's like, this is the first step towards everyone getting to fuck whatever they want. It's going to be awesome. It's so insane. But a little bit about his background. One thing I wanted to touch on, just because we might get into this at another point. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Reichians, Reichian psychology. His parents were a part of that. And so he has another book that's called Growing Up in the Orgone Box, Secrets of a Reichian Childhood. So he was raised in some kind of family where they would I think they had a sensory deprivation chamber or something like that as part of like psychotherapy. So he experienced a lot of that when he was young. So he's from a little bit of a kooky background, and not that this is justification for him doing anything, but he talks at length about being abused when he was young and things like that as well.
Yeah, I remember reading when I was doing some research on, I kind of wondering how common is this type of thing, and the Kinsey reports, which the American academic at the University of Indiana, I think, or Indiana University, in the decades ago, did the famous Kinsey reports, which like looked at an American human male sexual behavior, and he famously estimated that about 2% of the population, 2% of the male population had a sexual encounter with animals, and it was up to 50% for people raised on farms. And then more recent studies on this to look at like the causes of zoophilia or bestiality or childhood sexual trauma is highly correlated with it. So even though we're making jokes about it, there's a kernel of sadness to this guy. That his origin story is a tragic one. Obviously, we disagree profoundly with the direction he's decided to take things in trying to be the public face of wanting to have sex with animals.
Is there data on the rates for wildlife photographers?
There's a documentary that came out in 2004. It was a BBC documentary called Animal Passions. And for anyone who's interested in a fairly sober and serious look at this subject, it's interesting viewing. I think it was Washington State where it's set, because it attracted these types because there weren't any laws prohibiting bestiality or zoophilia. I might be mixing up my facts, but I think after the famous, that early viral internet video, Mr. Hands, where a man died, that prompted legislators to change the laws in Washington State, and they've managed to basically rid themselves of this issue, or it's all gone underground. I'm not sure, but definitely an interesting film.
I think you make an interesting point as well. We got to clarify our terminology when we're saying bestiality and zoophilia, because I think people who are in the zoophilic community, if that is a thing, I guess it is, like, are very clear about the distinctions between the two. But so are psychologists and psychiatrists in terms of like the clinical definitions of what they are. Like zoophilia is the sexual attraction to animals, whereas bestiality is actually engaging in the sexual act. And not everyone who engages in bestiality is actually a zoophile, right? They're not having sex with the donkey because they're sexually attracted to donkeys. It's a repository, for lack of a better word, when they don't have access to what they're actually sexually attracted to, which is presumably human beings. Many people are, even like in his interviews, this guy is very clear about the distinction between the two, and very clear that he is the zoophile, not bestiality. I think even in that interview, he makes a point of saying, bestiality is just have sex and then they walk away, but zoophiles are about love and tenderness and emotion and blah, blah, blah.
I've got a few clips. I want to play a relevant clip here from his interview, just on that exactly.
Zoophilia is Greek for lover of animals. A zoophile is someone, in contrast to a bestialist, who might just have sex with an animal and walk away. A zoophile is somebody who has tender.
It's really like, yeah, I'm not like those other guys, you know. So zoophiles are the nice guys of the animal rapists.
It's not all wham bam, thank you, dog.
Yeah, like he'll call the dog back, right? After.
Come here, boy.
So yeah, he defines himself as a zoophile. Quite funny. I was reading on his description somewhere. He says that later on in the 70s, he wanted to make a documentary on killer whales. And you can imagine how that would have gone.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
But also, Brenner is like, he went over to New Mexico. He was a reporter on the Navajo there for a long time. I read some of his old articles there. There were these very there was a style of writing about Native American culture at that time that I think was very influenced by like Carlos Castaneda, that I think was like quite criticized as being sort of like exploitative and like romanticizing those people and so on. So he did that for a long time. He also at one point did a lot of research on UFOs, tried to do a book on UFOs, which is a romance novel about having sex with aliens. Common theme here. And then it's also when he says, sorry, I just have to read this. So, I married my second wife and began the UFO research that ultimately led to my third book, the 2016 space romance novel, Melchior, an interstellar affair. My second marriage ended about the same time as this new millennium began. So it's
that's just brilliant that he managed to get two women to marry him. I mean, that in itself is worth an examination. Well, he also believes in the connection, like the Dolphin UFO connection as well, which seems to be a common idea amongst people in the ufology community. He says UFOs do seem to have something to do with the sea, and who's in a better position to know what's going on in the sea than the dolphins?
Yeah. Fair, I guess. I don't see how that connects to banging either the dolphins or the aliens, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of a justification for it. Maybe it's not that much different than kind of a little bit hippy dippy, go to music festivals kind of guys that act all spiritual and they just want to get laid. He does the same thing maybe with animals and UFOs and things, right? When it comes to this story, like the main issues I have with it, aside from like the ethics of it, is that my impression I get of this guy is that he's really trying to tap into all these like broad themes and just kind of cash in. I don't like the way that he tries to act like he's this big mind-blowing LSD guy when the whole time in the book he never does LSD. He's only smoking weed.
That's your main complaint here.
Well, okay, he's smoking weed from like the 1970s was so weak as well.
70s grass, yeah.
Yeah,
barely catching a buzz and then using that as justification for banging dolphins. I mean, I guess that's something we've said about.
Well, let me read this. This is him talking about smoking a joint on the beach. And suddenly, I was watching a nature documentary. My hands became alien arachnoid appendages, grotesque white crabs going about their business, detached from the mind observing them. That mind didn't speak, but it was keen. And if its thoughts could have been put into words... ... Like, it's like, he's talking about getting high, and he's like...
Yeah, it sounds like a description of smoking weed by someone who's never been high or never actually smoked weed before in their life.
And also, when we're talking about dolphins, so he's really focused on this idea that the dolphin came onto him and they had a connection. But dolphins are like really sexually flirtatious or aggressive animals. And it's like, in all training for people who handle them, it's like one of the first things they talk about is like how to push away their advances, because if you're around dolphins for a while, they're going to come onto you a little bit.
You're going to try to bang you.
Yeah, but he's convinced that he's the first one those dolphins ever come onto. And, you know, I think that's a bit naive. It's a bit narcissistic in a way, because, I mean, it's totally possible that this dolphin banged some other guys before, because it was in captivity in like shithole Florida land. Who knows what happened prior? And there's nothing special about it coming onto him, but he seems to think this makes him like really, really special. And so this is part of where this guy really hits it for me as like a perfect piece of shit book club target, because there's like this self-assuredness while being like a total creep weirdo, but there's this like strange confidence to him.
Yeah. That I'm not sure how it plays out in the book, but in his interviews when he talks about that moment of how, because I was also kind of curious to find out some guy bangs a dolphin. It's like, well, how does that start? Like, how does that in the moment actually begin? And he claims, like, as you said, the dolphin comes onto him. And he basically says, you know, the dolphin swam up to him and he started petting it on the head and then petting it on the fin. And then it rolled over, so he rubbed its stomach and then started frantically rubbing its genitals. And just thinking how insane that is. Like, my dog comes over to me and I scratch its back and it rolls over, so I start jerking it off. Like, it makes no sense. It's insane.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it in a million years, but I feel like if I wanted to get with your dog, it wouldn't be that challenging, and it wouldn't make me particularly special. In fact, it would probably make me a reprehensible human being. But he also thought that the dolphin was special as well, because I've got a quote from a different interview that I was watching, and he says, quote, "I think she was the dolphin equivalent of a scientist, and she was studying her captor's human being." And although the guy's a narcissist, he says, like, so he also believes in this telepathy with the dolphin as well. And he's like,
yeah,
I had rather, and this is a really telling quote, I had rather extensive telepathic communications with the dolphin, which is really weird if you think about it. But it turns out I'm not the only guy on the planet who has had this particular delusion.
Crazy.
And that's an annoying part about like the juicy bits of the book, is that a lot of it is him jerking off. Like he smokes weed, hangs out in his dorm, and there's long scenes of him talking about jerking off while imagining that he's telepathically communicating with dolphins.
Yeah.
Is he jerking off to the idea of the dolphin, or is it getting like, is the dolphin giving him tips over his shoulder, or like what's the dialogue and what's he actually getting off on?
It's like he's becoming one with the dolphin. In like a true telepathic sense. I think he's presenting it as a genuine transformative experience that's occurring, because he talks about his body turning into a dolphin body. At least within the book, it's sort of presented as if he's tapping into something magic.
So he thinks that the dolphin can intercept his thoughts, and he says that the dolphin, quote, gets in your head like a hot knife going through butter. And he's talking about specifically the telepathic abilities of the dolphin.
Yeah, a hot knife through butter. I just want to jump to this quote from him he's unintentionally really funny the way he delivers this. But some of his other experiences with animals, I'm just going to play a clip really quick here.
First sexual encounter with an animal came when I was about 11 or 12. I tried to have sex with the family dog, which was a miniature poodle named Miss Clavel. The dog was in heat, so I naively assumed that since she was having sex with a stud dog, she would be willing to have sex with me, which she wasn't.
I just love which she wasn't.
Shut down.
The viewers can't see the video, but when he mentions the name of the dog, they show the family portrait of the dog. It's like, so the viewer has context to what the dog looks like. But he even, I think, goes on after that, and he says he tried to screw the dog, it wasn't into it, and it was embarrassing, and that's when I started to wonder what was wrong with me. It's like, dude, I think we all know what's wrong with you. You're trying to bang the family pooch. And
you know what's odd, just quickly, is this, if anyone wants to watch the interview with him, I don't really necessarily recommend it, but it's on this YouTube channel called Florida Land that has all kinds of interesting short documentary information about Florida Land, about Miami and things like that. But for some reason, they're also including this bizarre example of a guy banging a dolphin at this like beloved resort.
I got to give a shout out to the Tom McLeod YouTube channel. So the quotes that I was reading come from an interview that this guy, he hasn't posted anything in years, and he only has like 2,500 subscribers, but he's got this 35-minute interview with Brenner it's worth a watch, because it's candid and kind of amateurish, and it's just some guy with a YouTube channel who I guess emailed him and got him to show up. So if you want to get a more of an insight into what this guy's thinking, in that interview, like, he's very frank about his activities with dogs. He says he was quote, more or less into sex with dogs. So like this guy's, we're having a bit of fun here. We're joshing, but clearly a guy who's mentally ill and has a lot of challenges and issues in his life.
And he talks about having his first sexual awakening like as like a child. He got like a erection in the theater watching the movie The Shaggy Dog, which was remade in I think 2009, starring Tim Allen as the Shaggy Dog. And this is listeners can't see this, but if you look at the Shaggy Dog, it has Tim Allen's eyes photoshopped onto the dog. So there might be a whole new generation of zoophiles that were sort of had their first experience with Tim Allen not so long ago.
But was the dog a female in the original?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say I've seen the Shaggy Dog.
Because I know
it was probably male, right? It was like the 60s or 50s.
Interesting.
It was really tough for female dog leads back then, I think.
Hearts are drying up.
Yeah. Thank God for the representation we have today.
Please leave the image up. Yeah, thank you. But do they like these zoophiles, like Brenner? Like they're not like the gender of the animal. Is that important?
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Without inspecting an animal's parts, I usually can't tell what gender it actually is. So if he's getting turned on by the Shaggy Dog, presumably it doesn't really matter if it's male or female.
When you see a dog with a big hog, though, you know what's up.
That doesn't answer my question. Yeah, fair point.
Everybody knows what's up, but no one knows what you mean. I think it's probably to do with some kind of more to do with some kind of like power thing. And so I doubt that the gender of the animal matters that much to the zoophile. I think it's more about having this thing that's like maybe you have you got weird hangups or weird like loner and whatever kind of sexual issues. So it's this thing that's like entirely dependent on you otherwise or at your mercy. Because
the dolphin in Wed Goddess, there's only one dolphin and it's a female dolphin, right?
There's a couple.
Oh, okay.
But that's true. He doesn't go after the male.
Just Dolly, I guess we should. I don't know if she wants her name mentioned on the podcast.
That's the real dolphin, isn't it? That's the one he fell in love with. Or is that the name of the character in the book? Or is it the same?
That's the real dolphin.
That's the real name.
Yeah. Embedded.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I think Dolly was, by all accounts, like a really talented acrobat. And I think it's a shame that, her legacy is largely associated with this, as opposed to her own accomplishments. But yeah, there's a male dolphin in there too. I wonder if he was just, like too much of a little bitch. He was kind of scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, it could also just be a logistical thing, right? It's probably harder to bang a male dolphin.
Do they have a butt?
Not that I want to get too graphic. I mean, they must have, presumably they've got an anus and a blowhole. There's an opportunity for cheap jokes and cheap puns. But yeah, with a female dolphin, they have different parts. Not that we need to dive into that, and I kind of regret even saying it.
Right.
Yeah, and let's try to avoid logistics.
I don't want to give anyone tips.
I guess so. I mean, you Chip, seem to be very much of the opinion, the position that this is abuse. Full stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really.
Are you
really...
not? What's wrong with you?
I have to. I mean, I'm not saying this for shock value. I'm probably more ambivalent or undecided about whether or not it, in this instance, as he describes it, constitutes abuse. That's putting aside like the moral question. I'm not saying it's acceptable by any means, that it's moral, that there's any good behind it. But is the animal worse off as a result of this guy's actions? And to that question, I'm not so certain. And I know maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, according to him, it killed itself after have a broken heart after he left, which is obvious. I think more just his own ego. But I for me, it is 100% abuse because the dolphin's already in captivity, and like a show dolphin that are already probably mistreated significantly. And like I said, I don't know if he was the first guy to have sex with it. To be honest, if it was so forward, I mean, there could have been other people abusing it too.
Yeah.
But if you were to be on a sailboat and you fell off in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Pacific, and some dolphins saved you, and they were for some reason like helping carry you to shore over the course of several days and you happen to have a love affair with one of the dolphins at that point, perhaps then I would have more of an ear for like the zoophile argument compared to one that's in a tiny cage sneaking in and banging it after hours.
That's actually a really good point, because if it was a human being, they'd essentially be a slave. And of course, even if the slave, quote unquote, consents, which a slave by definition can't do, it would be seen as immoral and misabuse of power. But I think that I might be wrong, but the general, I think, philosophical complaint about bestiality is that, sex, in order to be kind of moral and ethically conducted, needs to be consensual, and animals are physically incapable of consenting. They can't, they can't consent, and they're incapable, obviously, of communicating or understanding risks and abuses the same way that human beings are. And further, like when people make the point, like, yeah, but the animal wants it and the animal acted like it wants it. Well, animals do all sorts of things that they don't understand the consequences of. And just because animals act like animals in the wild, that doesn't give you permission to fuck the dolphin or whatever other animal.
Well, it's like your dog wants to eat chocolate. It's not going to end well for it. And then like with that in mind, and then her being in captivity, she's not even taking a salary working there, right? If you think of it on like some kind of, I don't know, degrees of immorality or something. When you compare a story like his to the study we were talking about prior with the woman that was like researching these dolphins, and it seemed to be sort of jerking them off on the side to continue on with the work otherwise, so they weren't like distracted or something. And in this case, a guy just sneaking into the cage to bang the dolphin. I think it's in this case like an extreme example of like abuse, even if you were to accept like the zoophile mindset, I think even they would probably take issue with it.
Yeah, but that other story is also, the Margaret Howell Levatt story is fraught with ethical minds as well, because they're forcing the dolphins to take LSD. The dolphins were living in captivity in this small dolphinarium, and then after the project lost funding, they sold them allegedly to some facility in Miami where one of those dolphins, the main dolphin that got jacked off, Peter, also, quote, committed suicide. So, things ended poorly for both of these animals, unfortunately.
They might have sold them to Florida Land. They might have ended up at the same facility.
Oh, I hope not, just for those dolphins' sake. How much abuse can one dolphin take?
Yeah.
They're getting flown around. It's like a brutal sex trafficking ring for them, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though, like, talking about like the moral rights and wrongs of it, and I think both Chip and me are firmly in the camp of seeing this as very wrong. And the author Malcolm Brenner and Theo are both seem to be very much in the camp of being supportive of this type of stuff. But there's also like it's like the question of what's morally right and wrong, but then there's also the question of what's legally right. Because as I was researching this guy, I was just like, how the fuck is this guy just all over YouTube, writing books, talking about how he's banging dolphins and dogs and everything? How is he not in prison? Like, surely that's a crime. And then looking into it, and it wasn't a crime. And if you read about like when countries or provinces or American states actually started to make it, like to codify and legislate it as a crime, it's shockingly recent. And he was, his dolphin days were, I guess, back in the 70s. And Florida didn't even make bestiality illegal until 2011, which seems insane.
And it suggests, I guess, there's no federal legislation prohibiting it either, if all of these states have to enact their own manimal love acts. And
not all states do. Not all states. It's not illegal everywhere in the U.S., which also seems bonkers. But even in I was reading an article about even in Canada, there was a really tragic case that went before the Supreme Court in 2016 where a guy had horribly abused a bunch of animals and children, and they tried to do him for bestiality, to prosecute him for bestiality, but the way it was codified in the law, it required penetration to be considered an act of bestiality. And because he'd done all sorts of horrendous things that I'm not going to describe, but because he hadn't actually done that, he couldn't be convicted of bestiality, which prompted then a new bill to be, like, it wasn't until 2019 that in Canada that sort of all sexual acts with an animal, not only penetration, were codified as bestiality, which again seems shocking.
Thanks, Trudeau.
Yeah, that's when Canada went woke, I suppose.
It's interesting that there aren't any old, like, prudish, like when you think about like prudish sexual laws and things, that nothing ever touched upon this.
Yeah, it's weird because it was certainly like, it was certainly considered to be wrong in a Western culture, I'm sure, for a very long time. And I was reading about how in the medieval time, people were regularly executed for it. And it was something that they'd often accuse witches of doing, right? Because the devil was seen to have kind of would take on an animal form, often a goat, and then come and supposedly, allegedly, have sex with witches. And that was seen as like that. Yeah, but almost the wrongness of it was the congress with Satan more so than banging the goat. But it's weird because there's all sorts of like Roman and Greek myths as well have so many stories about Zeus turning into a bull or an eagle and having sex with demigods or humans, Europa and Ganymede. So there's this really long and strange relationship between religion and bestiality. But it's almost, I wonder if, like, it's an interesting point that you raised that it was only, it was considered wrong, but not legally wrong. I wonder if it was just so outrageous that people almost didn't even think they needed a law for it.
Maybe Dolly the Dolphin had that devil in her,
This might be a good place to wrap it up. It's been a really fascinating examination of Wet Goddess. So just if you can let the listeners know, where can they find Wet Goddess? Where can they pick it up?
Oh, don't do that.
We got to drop a referral code. Wet Goddess available on...
No.
Yeah. No, I give this one, I don't know, I think I maybe gave it a 2 or 3 out of 10.
Like a normal... Okay.
I find the author reprehensible. I think he's a sort of a coward that's really seeking attention. Not very well written, but it's still like digestible. It's not like by any stretch the worst thing I've ever read. There's some books that are just like an absolute slog. You know what I mean? I could at least turn the pages and get through it. So I give it about a 2 or 3.
Speaking of ratings, on Goodreads, this book has a rating of 3.4. I don't know how, out of 5. And Moby Dick is 3.5. So Moby Dick just edging out Wet Goddess there. But there's one great review written by someone called Marin, which I hope you don't mind if I just quickly read. He writes, knowing that dolphins are amongst our mammalian species that can be quite extraordinarily amorous and not monogamous, can anyone say that if they have the opportunity to swim with a dolphin, they would not be tempted? Yeah. Yes, I can very confidently say that I wouldn't be tempted. What's wrong with you?
Especially in a tiny cage, it's like filled with piss and shit.
It definitely gets into so bad it's good territory. Whereas Moby Dick, which you referenced earlier, it's one of those ones where it's like it's almost so good it's bad. If that makes sense to you guys,
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, this has been a great episode. Bo, anything that you want to plug? Chip, anything you got to plug in?
We'll get the site back online at some point, and we'll figure out a way that we post these.
Absolutely. Site's coming back online. Subscribe, like, tell a friend, download. We love getting comments. We'll post an email address in the show notes as well. Send us emails. Send us requests. We can't guarantee that we're going to do it, but we'd love to know what piece of shit books you guys are reading right now. But until next time, this is your man. I got to name check myself because I'm using a fake name here. What am I calling myself? This is
you
your
named
main
yourself
man.
after like the most popular podcaster in the world right now.
There's a guy named Theo Lennox.
Theo Vaughn.
Yeah, I might have to pick a new name for the second episode. All right, well, this is Theo Lennox signing off. Join us next week where our piece of shit book will be the Bible. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.